Welcome again, everyone, to the second day of our residency with Barbara Hendricks. We are delighted to welcome you back to the Westbrook Recital Hall here in the Glenn Korff School of Music for this amazing occasion when our distinguished alumna, Barbara Hendricks, returns to campus, and tomorrow will receive the honorary Doctor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We are very excited, as I know you are, and thrilled to have her back on this side of the pond to share with our students yesterday in masterclass and today to tell some stories and recount an amazing legacy of artistic and humanitarian achievement on behalf of our art and on behalf of the people of the world. So would you join me in welcoming Barbara Hendricks? The format is intended to be an informal one, the cameras notwithstanding. All of us will get very tired of the sound of my voice quickly, so I'm hoping that you too will have great questions and feel very comfortable in asking them. My only request is that when you do so, that you use a good voice so that the microphones can pick up the question as well as Barbara's answer. Her life is an amazing history that has been chronicled beautifully in her memoir, Lifting My Voice, and copies of which are available just outside, I would remind you. But it has been a real education for me as I had the chance to read through this and learn more about her life and journey. And so I wanted to ask you a few questions just to get the ball rolling, if I could. And so the first one probably is a simple question, but what is your first musical memory?
Oh, I think, most likely, while I was still in my mother's stomach.
Wow.
Because my father was a pastor in the church, and both my parents sang, because that's what you did. Not because to show their voices, but because that was a part of the service. And my father started in rural churches, some that did not have instruments.
Yes.
And so the first singing I heard was a cappella singing. Of someone would start a song, and then the rest of the congregation, or those people who thought they could sing, would join in. So I must have heard that before I was even born, because my mother was a school teacher, so my early years were between two places, school and church. And usually we lived next door to the church. So that was the first music I ever heard.
And the singing was at church? Was it also at home?
No, mostly at church at the beginning. I probably was sort of humming around for myself, but mainly singing in church. You know, I sang in church because that was what I could do. That was before the era of what do you have, pop star, pop idol, I don't know what it's called over here, American Idol or something, where, the minute your child let out 2 notes, you thought, well, okay, now you're going to be a star and be on TV. Nobody thought that. Nobody entertained that idea. I sang in church because that was what I could do. It was the same like with household chores. I was good at ironing, so I got to do the ironing. And I should have known that my sister was cleverer than I, because when she ironed something, you might as well have taken it off the clothesline and worn it.
Oh,
but I think she probably knew that she would get out of doing the ironing. Singing was a little bit, what I could do, and nobody made a big deal about it, which is probably why through all my school years that I continued to be focused on the sciences rather than on singing as a career choice anyway.
Yes. So some in the room may be surprised to know that your degrees from the University of Nebraska are in mathematics and chemistry, and that your formal musical pursuits following your time at the University of Nebraska were perhaps more intense and focused than those before. But tell us the story from those early days through to Tennessee, and then first to Nebraska Wesleyan and then to UNL. Give us a little bit of that history and in overview.
Well, we traveled a lot, as I said, for my father's work. Starting in very small rural churches in Arkansas. My father eventually went to Tennessee, to Chattanooga and Memphis. And sometimes we followed, and sometimes we didn't because my mother was a school teacher. And at that time, he was the pastor in the CME Church, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. They made the changes in November, which was not very good for school teachers, right, because she'd already started the school year. And when we moved to Tennessee, we did not go with him. We stayed in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And it was in Pine Bluff that I sang outside of the home for the first time. Mm-hmm. In 6th grade, I auditioned. I was singing in the class, and I sang. I think it was Cinderella, and I got the title role in 6th grade. And the following year, when I went to junior high school, that was Merrill High School in Pine Bluff, they had a very well-known choir director. His name was Mr. Wilbur Glenn. And you weren't allowed to be in choir until you were in high school. But it was a junior and a high school that shared the same building. Mm-hmm. But my 6th grade teacher wrote him and said, I have a student who has a very, very nice voice. And would you listen to her, even though she should maybe wait 3 years? So I sang for him, and he took me into the choir because he was really short on sopranos. And I had a very clear voice that sounded more like a boy soprano, but I had a very clear high C. Mm-hmm. And the sopranos were a little bit on the short side. So I was allowed to sing in the senior high school choir.
In the 6th grade?
In the 7th grade.
7th grade.
And the 7th grade. So, but I was only 12.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting. And I remember we were getting choir robes, and they wanted us all to have the same shoes. So they chose somebody decided which shoes we should have. They were sort of black pumps. But my mother did not want me to have heels. So, crying and pleading, and I said, but I can't be like the others. Already I'm the youngest in the choir. And so she allowed me to go to the shop where everyone was buying the shoes, and I bought my size. And I was so happy, and I thought I won, until I came home 2 days later to find that my mother had taken them to the shoemaker who had clipped off the heels, which meant that my toes stuck up. Because she didn't want me to wear high heels. So. But I wore them anyway. And
you have pictures of that?
No, I don't. I was not very happy. I can tell you, I wasn't happy. And then, so Mr. Glenn was really wonderful because since I was the youngest in the choir, he really sort of protected me. Mm-hmm. And I sang my first role, which was Amal and the Night Visitors of Menotti. Mm-hmm. And I do have pictures of that. And then, but I was doing my studies, and I liked mathematics a lot, and nobody said, hey, you can be a star or anything. So I just enjoyed singing. And of course, for my parents, for me to get a college education was the key for me for success. Mm-hmm. To have the diploma in hand, to have a proper education was what they worked for all of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so they also thought, to have a scholastic academic background was the most security for my future. But I wasn't unhappy with that because I enjoyed studying, I enjoyed school. Then we finally did move to Tennessee, went to Chattanooga, and I sang in the choir there, and then went in school in Memphis. Right. And on just 2 days before my birthday, before I was supposed to have a birthday party, my father was moved, because I'm born in November, back to Little Rock, and he was going to be what was the presiding elder, which means that he was in charge of several churches. He didn't just have one. And of course, I was in a foul mood because my birthday party was down the drain. I was packing boxes and arrived at the Horace Mann High School, which had and of course I had to audition for the choir. But they sent me there anyway You want to be in the choir, okay, because choir was our homeroom. And you all understand that. But when I'm in Europe, I have to explain what homeroom is. But anyway. I was there with my first day. And also I thought, I had come from Memphis and Little Rock, and this little two-bit town. And, although I didn't know very much about Memphis at all, because I still stayed. My school was walking distance. The church was next door to where I live. And that's about what I knew about Memphis anyway.
There's your world, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But anyway, so I was sitting there. And it was just before Thanksgiving, and they were auditioning, the sopranos were auditioning for a solo for the Thanksgiving assembly. And so I just sit here listening, and then the choir director, a wonderful man named Mr. Arthur Porter, turned to me and said, would you like to try the solo? And I thought, I guess this is my audition in front of the rest of the choir, wonderful. So I sang that. And I had sort of gotten it in my ear because I'd heard 4 or 5 other people sing through it. I sang it, and he decided to give me the solo, which made me very popular among the sopranos.
Yeah, I bet.
As a matter of fact,
sure.
The mezzo-sopranos were my best friends in the choir for that year. And so I sang that. And he took very much care and he said, some months later, and he said, I don't want you to sing solo too often in the assemblies. And he said, because when you sing, the other students must think that it's an event. And that was something that was very important that I learned, that it is very good to make yourself rare. And not to always be out there all the time. So, and he was a very, very accomplished jazz pianist and had a jazz trio, and he was playing every weekend. And so I became his official babysitter. He had 3 children. And that is where it was in his house when the kids had gone to sleep that I discovered jazz, because he had an incredible collection of jazz, LPs at that time, yeah. And so that's what I did. I was just putting on records and listening to him, and I became a jazz fan at his home.
Did you scat to the records?
No, I didn't scat at all. I was just listening. And so that was high school. I graduated from Horace Mann High School after sort of reluctantly somehow becoming Miss Horace Mann, because that year they decided to change the rules. It had been to make it more like a beauty contest. Before, it was the football team that voted, and it was always the most popular girl who was homecoming queen. And so I was sort of looking at the board where they were announcing these changes, and I wasn't really paying that much attention. And there was a young girl who had not been very nice to me, because she once said to me, "Oh, is that something a hand-me-down from your sister?" And I said, "No," because it wasn't. It was a hand-me-down from my mother. My mother had made something over. So, I mean, at that time, most of the clothing that I wore were sewn by my mother. So that's really dates me, doesn't it? Anyway, but I was so annoyed with her. And she said, "You're not thinking about entering, are you?" And I said, "Watch me." So I entered. And because they had talent and everything, I sang. And one of the judges was from one of the local colleges. In the music department there. And I think that's why I won, because I was so skinny. The borrowed swimsuit was sort of falling off me. I did very well in the question, because there was the meaning of life and everything. So I won Miss Horace Mann, and I was the most unlikely homecoming queen. Because, it was getting that sort of time where you were wearing sort of like a beetle haircut down here, and tennis shoes with holes in them. My mother refused to drive me to school some days, and she said, "You're taking the bus, and I'm not taking you looking like that." And so it was quite a big to do on campus that I was a homecoming queen, because the homecoming queen was never a member of the honor society. That was the first time.
Okay.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So after that, I was 16, graduated from high school, and my father, of course, at that age, wanted me to go to a church school. And the CMU Church had a college in Jackson, Tennessee, called Lane College. And I enrolled there. I wasn't so happy because I really had wanted from the beginning to major in physics, and they didn't have a physics department, so I was very unhappy about that. And I was also trying to change a few things around school, so I was quite popular with the dean. And so after 2 years, we went on tour. I was able to sing in the choir. I auditioned for the choir. I was not allowed to take voice lessons because that was reserved for music majors. And on tour, we went to two places that I remember. One was Juilliard, Wisconsin, and the other was Lincoln, Nebraska, to Nebraska Wesleyan, where we did a concert. I remember it was the Beethoven Mrs. Lemnis. And very hard.
Yeah,
Yes.
no kidding.
And while I was at Beloit, I applied to the math department to transfer without telling my parents. And so that summer, I was waiting to get a letter from them about whether I could get scholarship, because it would have been impossible for me to change, certainly without my parents' agreement, without a scholarship. And before that letter arrived, a letter from the dean, who thought that I should behave better, was inviting me to be an exchange student to Nebraska Wesleyan. And I still don't remember exactly why I chose that, or I didn't wait, but I ended up coming to Lincoln, Nebraska that following September. As an exchange student to Nebraska Wesleyan, and 4 students from Wesleyan went to Lane. And this was because the president of Lane and the president of Wesleyan had met at a Methodist conference and decided that they wanted to have this initiative to have the exchange program. So all went well at Wesleyan. I was in the dormitory at Centennial Hall, if any of you know. And it was brand new. I had a roommate. First I had a room. The first time I had a roommate who played the guitar, so she was singing folk songs and Bob Dylan songs all the time. And there were 4 Barbaras there were 4 Barbaras on the floor, on our floor. And I've always hated nicknames, but Barbara was gone, so I ended up with Babs.
Babs.
Babs, yes.
Good to know.
No. But that was because when you got a phone call to know who it was for.
Right.
So we all were called something different, the Barbaras. And I had a great time, and I was able to take voice lessons as an elective course for the first time. And I was studying with the head of the department, who we all called affectionately Pop Bennett. He was an elderly gentleman, I think originally from Vienna, maybe. And one of his students was a good friend of mine, and she was preparing to enter the district Metropolitan Opera auditions. And she said, "Oh, why don't you do this? It'll be fun." So I said, "Yeah, what do I have to do?" He said, "But you know, you come and sing a couple arias." So I was working on some things with Pop Bennett, and so I prepared them, and I went expecting to sort of just to accompany her. And I thought, yeah, of course they're going to throw me out after the first round, but this will be fun. And I advanced to the semifinals and then to the finals, and then I won first prize math major, you know? And so that meant I was going to have to go to Minneapolis in the spring for the regional auditions. And but then I was supposed to go back to Lane in December because the exchange program was only 1 semester. And I thought, well, what can I do? Because since I'm not a music major there, there's nobody to help me prepare for this audition, because I knew I had to prepare better than I had for the one here, because I had learned my music sort of phonetically from a record, and Pop Bennett was trying to clean up the mess. But I then realized that it was more serious, an undertaking than I had when I entered the first time, and that I was going to have to prepare. And so Dr. Rogers called the president of Lane College and asked for permission for me to stay until the end of the semester, through the end of the year, school year, so that I could do this competition. And I had some fantastic ladies who were on the committee of the Metropolitan Opera auditions, and that was headed by a very energetic woman, Mrs. Phil Seidels, who was also sort of behind President Rogers to get them so that I could stay and prepare with Pop Bennett the audition. So that happened, and I went on to Minneapolis. I made it to the finals, but thank God I didn't win, because I was no way ready to go and stand on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera and sing it. Then I think I would have sort of fainted. But anyway, I did not win. I got some very positive remarks about my singing, and that made me happy. But I was eager to get back to school, because I had been quite neglecting my studies, preparing this, and I still had to finish off the year. So I was studying very hard for my finals, and there was a woman, during this time also, because to earn myself a little bit of money, I joined the choir at the St. Paul Methodist Church, and the choir director there was Dale Gans, and the minister was Clarence Forsberg. At first, I used to, in my choir book, have my sort of chemistry book down below. And so after we had sung and during the sermon, I would sit and study. And once I thought, I'm tired of this, I closed it and started to listen. And I was listening to Dr. Forsberg, and I thought, not stupid what he's saying, not stupid. I mean, I've heard sermons in my life, I grew up with it. And I thought, it made so much sense. And then I started to listen to him every Sunday. And he became a very close friend and a very good counselor to me, long after I left here. I mean, I could call him up from New York and say, I have this problem, what do you think? And he would, talk to me. Anyway, so that I already had this relationship at St. Paul. And there was a lady who was a member of the congregation who was preparing, I don't even know what kind of meeting, something here at the university, and was pestering me to come and sing for it. And I said, no, I can't. I mean, I had a physics final the next day, and I was quite far behind. And you know what? When I would study for my finals, the best place, I thought, was to go to Wesleyan at the library at the Ag campus, because it was always empty. So I knew I was not going to see any of my friends who were going to disturb me, and it was quiet. So I said, no, I have to be the whole day preparing for this final, because I'm behind. And so she said, please. I said, if I can sing at the beginning and leave. I think it was 5-10 minutes I sang. So I did that, didn't think about it, was thinking of getting through with my finals. And a couple days later, Pop Bennett said, I've received a letter for you. And it was from a Mr. Richard Smith, who had been present at that meeting. And he was on the Board of Trustees here, but as well as the Aspen Summer Music School and Festival. And it was an offer of a full scholarship to go to Aspen that summer and study with the singer called Jenny Terrell. Well, of course, being here in Nebraska, I knew about Aspen because everybody tried to get away to Colorado sometimes to go skiing, but I'd never, ever heard of Jenny Terrell. And before that happened, my organic chemistry teacher had suggested to me that I go with her during the summer to Vermilion, South Dakota, to do complex ion substitution research. And I thought that was okay, and I said, yeah, maybe. And I was about to say yes to that when we got this letter. And then I thought, well, complex ion substitution doesn't sound that interesting anymore.
Vermilion, Aspen, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which one should it be?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you do?
So I went to Aspen.
Shocking.
I went to Aspen and, I don't know how many of you are going to be here tomorrow, but because some of this I will tell tomorrow in my speech. But I was, it was for 9 weeks. And I spent 9 weeks with music from morning to night because in our dorms where we lived, people would get up in the morning practicing their instruments, warming up. I went to fantastic concerts with the Juilliard String Quartet, the orchestra, Jenny Turrell. I sang in the choir when Jenny Turrell sang the solo in Mahler's Second Symphony. I also was singing in the choir and working backstage for La Boheme. The first time I ever saw an opera was my favorite and still is among my favorites. And I remember saying, if I ever were to do this singing thing, I really would love to sing Mimi. I just fell in love with the role. Yeah. So at the end, and I studied French, diction, and acting, and met a lot of wonderful people. And of course, most of the people who were there were studying in music schools, and of course the instrumentalists had been playing their instruments and studying since they were 5, But it was a completely unknown world to me, but somehow not foreign. I loved it, of course, and being in the mountains in Aspen is magical also.
How was the singing at that altitude?
Well, I'll tell you something about the altitude. They kept saying to us before we arrived, I think Mr. Smith said to me, now be careful, the first days, it's a very high altitude, you're not used to it. And of course I forgot it and I sort of we arrived, and I always was doing things quite quickly. I sort of ran up the stairs to my room and nearly passed out.
Yes.
So I got used to it. We got used to it after a while, but it's, yes, that I will never forget that. Right. So I was taking lessons, and all this music was absolutely fantastic, but the most important thing was my encounter with Jenny Turrell. And because that was an encounter that was going to change my life. At the end of the 9 weeks, she said, I think you have a special talent, and if you want to continue working seriously, I will accept you as one of my students at the Juilliard School. And I said, I'd love to, but I have to go back and finish my degree. I wasn't going to throw away 3 years out the window. I said, but I can prepare the audition for next spring, because also I needed the time. Auditioning for Juilliard and going to do the regional auditions for the Met was not exactly the same preparation. So I thought, but now what can I do? I can't go back to Wesleyan. And at Lane, there's no possibility for me, certainly to prepare. I mean, I can't take voice lessons there because I'm not a music major. And I called Dale Gans, and I said, what should I do? And he said, we'll solve this. He said, I think you should apply here at the university. And so he helped me. I did my application. I got accepted. I got full tuition scholarship. And but then I needed a place to live because that was not included in this. And so I was talking about that with my friends, and one of the friends I had was a young boy from Lincoln. His name was Fred Webster Jr., and he was like kind of a friend, but because I was from Lincoln, he was always there following, this young kid, And I said, so he said, you can come live with us. I'm going to ask my mom. And I said, yeah, sure. And so he came back the next day and he said, it's all settled. My parents think it's a great idea. So I came back to Lincoln and moved into my room on Sheridan Boulevard.
Nice address.
To a lovely family that really sort of took me into their hearts. It was really fantastic. And so I started school here, University of Nebraska. Dr. Gans became my voice teacher, and he prepared to prepare me for the audition to Juilliard. So how much of your question have I finished?
You're doing great.
told me up until...
You're getting to the UNL part. We're
Is,
thrilled.
is this it?
No, you're doing great.
So I had a wonderful year here, taking voice lessons. I was a member of University Singers, exceptionally, since I was not a music major, but I was not allowed to sing solos. I don't know who decided that, the students or the teachers. But anyway, once, one of the tenors,
The sopranos.
one of the tenors was ill. And I think it was Mr. Jenkins, who probably wanted to give me a chance to sing a solo, said, well, since he's ill, can you learn this and sing? I think it was the Sanctus of Gounod. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. But when the tenor found out, he miraculously recovered. So I never got to sing a solo with University Singers. And I also... well, first of all, it's a much bigger campus than Wesleyan, and so I just love the variety and also to be a little bit anonymous, because everywhere we ever lived, I was always the preacher's daughter, and we lived in small places, and even when we lived in bigger cities, in the sort of the crowd we ran around with, I was the preacher's daughter, and at Wesleyan, I was an exchange student. Yeah. So when I came here, I was just one of the 20,000. You were some 20,000 then, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the possibility to be able to spend time with students who studied music, or who were acting, or who were architects, philosophers who were studying other things, and not just chemistry students. But everything was quite near: the chemistry building, the music building, and the theater.
Architectural.
Yeah, and the architectural hall. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of traveled between these different groups of people and made very good friends. I actually volunteered to work at the theater and had a small walk-on role, and was very impressed by the head of the department, Mr. Dallas Williams was his name. He was quite a character, very authoritarian and very strict, but he taught all of us something very important about what it means to work collectively for an end, an artistic end. And I remember him telling the actors, he said, you are nothing without all the people who work backstage, who give you the possibility to stand on stage. And it's something that never left me. So I enjoyed that very much. And then finally, it was time for me to go to Juilliard and do this audition. And I went, did my audition. I must say that most of the things that they wanted to test us in was sort of a waste of time. Solfege, ear training. I couldn't play the piano. The first thing the piano teacher, I said, I don't really think I needed to have an exam in piano. I said, because I don't know how to play the piano. She said, yes, but simple stuff. So she said, first, can you play me a scale in key of G? And I said, I don't really know what the key of G is. Complex ion substitution, maybe? Can we talk about that instead?
That's right. I was going to do the study in Vermilion, but it didn't work out.
So of course I had to start piano that meant I had to start piano from the beginning, and ear training, and all the things that I needed. So, but I came back, when I came back after a few weeks, I received my letter of acceptance with a full tuition scholarship for 4 years to study with Jenny Terrell in the Bachelor of Music program in opera and voice. So that was that year, and that was the spring. So I changed my major to chemistry from math because of the credits that I needed to graduate by the end of the year. And I had as my advisor the head of the chemistry department. I was the only undergrad advisee that he had. Mm-hmm. And he was very supportive. And he said to me, this one you don't really need, because if you come back, you can always take this course. And he said, but I'm not expecting to see you back here. I think this Juilliard thing is going to work out for you. So, and I had many of my professors who were musicians, who were amateur musicians who played. I think there was a string quartet in the department.
In the chemistry department.
In the chemistry department,
yeah.
And they were and they were all so incredibly supportive to me. But by the end of the summer, I had not finished all my requirements, and so I was staying over during the summer session to finish those so that I could get my degree. So I did not attend the commencement ceremonies in 1969 because I graduated in August. So tomorrow will be my commencement ceremony for me.
You get fancier stuff tomorrow than
Yeah.
you would have gotten in '69 if you showed up. You get better robes.
Okay.
Well, that's great. And so I find it interesting that you started college at 16, graduated on time at the age of 20 in a very real sense, and then started another bachelor's degree with the full 4 years of that at the age of 20. So you really weren't that far removed from the rest of the, if you will, freshman class
When I arrived
at Juilliard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
had a little bit of a head start in some ways.
yes,
right?
but it was really wonderful for me that I had the background of going to a normal school.
Right.
Yes, because Juilliard is not a normal school. I mean, it's full of people who start playing violin at age 5, and so with parents who tell them, "You're going to be the next Heifetz." And so I felt quite normal in New York City. It's also, and was very grateful that I had because I knew there was something that I could do, and that I have always loved singing, and I knew that I would always sing. Whether or not I was going to make a career out of it, I had no idea, but that I knew that if this didn't work, I was 20, and at age 24, I knew that back here in Lincoln, the chemistry department would welcome me back. So there was not this sense of, if I don't succeed, it's the end of the world. It's like, I'm here, I'm going to do whatever comes my way, I'm open to it, to learn and to really benefit from this fantastic opportunity. I can say that when I arrived in New York, I had no idea what this was meant. I didn't know what it meant to sing, to be an opera singer, to have a career. I didn't know what it looked like. It was an empty slate. The screen was completely empty. This was a leap of faith. But I felt that at age 20 that I could afford to see what destiny had in store for me. And that I did not want to be the age I am today and say to my children, well, if I had married your dad and had you, I could have been doing that too on stage. I didn't want to have a regret. I would have said to them, well, when I was 20, I did something really crazy, went off to New York and tried to be an opera singer. It didn't work, and I'm happy with my life as it is. And that's what I wanted to say. So I thought I owed it to myself to just go and see what this was about. But again, the decision for me to study with Jenny Terrell was a divine one. Yeah. Because that empty slate, that screen that had nothing on it, by working with her, that began to fill up with a purpose. A purpose to become an artist. Even though I was rather rebellious against my father, there was quite a lot of my father still in me. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I should do something for work that was so much pleasure, I still had a little Protestant problem with that, even though I didn't think so. Yeah. And meeting Jenny Terrell, watching her work, and seeing what kind of artist she was, made me realize that the pursuit of what I was doing was something noble, and the more noble it would be because of my endeavor to be of service to my art, as she was. Yeah. And so I decided there was a purpose to doing what I was doing, and that was, she was one of the. I cannot imagine being here and doing the career I've done without having met the personification of a true artist in Jenny Terrell. So that was really important. Those 4 years I spent in Juilliard, learning everything, learning to play the piano. Not great, I don't do it in public, but enough to learn to learn my music. Learning languages, I had to learn everything from scratch, all the languages. And I just remember wondering, when am I going to be able to sing German and it won't hurt? Because my muscles weren't used to it, and I was so perfectionist. I took this mathematical mind into my way of working, but I thought, I'm here in New York. There's so much theater. There's so many creative people. Whatever time I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it fully. I'm just going to take whatever I can learn and like a sponge and take it in. And that sort of led to, my finishing Juilliard and having an agent by the time I graduated. Because it was very funny. I had auditioned to do magic flute, and had been assigned the role of Pamina. And then the director or the conductor changed, and that conductor wanted somebody else for Pamina, so they gave me the First Lady. Oh, okay. And about 2 weeks before, and it was being directed by George London. That's right, there were some changes. So 2 weeks before the opening, George London called me in and said, my dear, he said, the young girl who's singing the first boy has such an intonation problem. And your intonation is so wonderful. Would you do us the favor of doing the part of the first boy? And I thought, Pamina, First Lady, now the first boy. Next they're going to ask me to sing Monostatos. You'll keep coming down to all the road. Right. So I learned the part of the first boy, and I did it the best I could. And there was a man who came to the performance from Columbia Artists, who then called Jenny Terrell and said, I'd like to be her agent when she leaves school at the end of the year. So, doing first boy, you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
You never who's in the house.
You never know. Right. So, that was sort of the beginning, and auditions for conductors, and one concert led to another, and here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer to a question that I didn't know was going to give us such richness. Thank you. That's great. You have questions too. What question would you like to?
You only had two?
Oh, I have many. I just don't want to hog the floor. Any other questions you'd like to ask?
I'll ask a question.
Speak up.
All right, I'll talk as loudly as I can.
Thank you, Donna.
Did you mention that you sang in University Singers with Pete Jenkins?
Yes.
He's actually the reason that I'm here. What was your experience like in University Singers?
Oh, I loved it because I have always loved to sing in choir. There's something wonderful about singing in the harmonies with other people. And of course, this was the choir, the best of the best. And he was an absolutely fantastic choir director. So I have really wonderful memories of that. And was really sorry that tenor got well. So, because I was really hoping to be able to sing that solo.
Yes.
As a voice teacher, I'm curious. Can you tell me what rep you sang when you did your first Met Council auditions?
Yes, I did. I sang because I sort of learned them by rote from a recording of Leontine Price. I sang the aria from Turandot, Signora Ascolta. I think I sang also from Madame Butterfly, and I sang Depuis le jour, Louise, which actually became my big competition and audition aria.
And so then what did you sing when you auditioned for Juilliard?
Well, I sang probably some of those arias, but there were other requirements, some leader, and that was why it was so important for me to work with Dr. Gans, because would have had no idea what to choose. I think I probably had to sing something in French, something in German. There were requirements for the audition that I sang, and I probably did Signora Ascolta, most likely.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Because I guess that she probably would remember.
Yes. But the songs I don't remember, but it was most likely something in German and French, the usual requirements there, and opera arias in Italian.
So during your Juilliard days, do you remember a best day during your time there and a toughest day during your time there? And what were they?
Well, my best days were the days of my lessons.
Okay.
Because when my lesson was over, Jenny Terrell was not very interested in vocal technique, and nor was I. So I would arrive to the lesson, she said, "Have you warmed up?" And I said, "No, not really." She said, "Okay, let's do it." So we would warm up because scales and things were not her thing. And then she said, "So what have you prepared today?" And that's when the fun began, because we worked on the music. And so every lesson were my best days because I almost couldn't wait for the lesson to be over so that I could run to the practice room to see if I could do what we'd worked on, if I could actually do it by myself. And so I had many of those best days.
Nice.
Probably the worst day was sort of some of my solfege lessons because, my teacher was the daughter of Ernst Bloch, who was obsessed with her father. So most of the lessons she always talked about her father because her father evidently had all these affairs and everything. And so she was talking about her father, my father this. And then I would say to Miss Bloch, "I'm not really sight reading." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because you told us what we're going to have today. I looked at it last night and I said, unfortunately, it's memorized. So I'm not sight reading." "That's okay, dear. It'll come." And then I remember one day we were sight reading. I was very good at rhythm. I loved rhythm dictation. Oh, I thought that was just the best. Mathematics.
There you go.
And then we were doing, I had to sight read something, and I got so frustrated. And I didn't cry, or there came a sort of tear. And so she said, "What is it?" And I said, all my life, anything I wanted to know, all I had to do was study. And I said, "And I don't know how to study this, because if I study it, it's memorized, and I'm not sight reading." So that was sort of one of the times I sort of cried in class, because I had always been able to count on the fact that intellectually I could teach myself something.
Yeah.
So, but no, there was a difficult time when I did finally do La Bohème. The conductor was, what's his name? He had been the conductor in Cincinnati, and he became ill and eventually died. Thomas Shippers, exactly. And he was the one who chose me for Mimi. And the director, so this was at the time of the Callas classes. That's another whole story. And Callas was sort of the advisor, and the director was Kakayanis, Greek, who had done, did he do Zorba the Greek? I think so. And we were two casts, and he had chosen the other Mimi, a very beautiful Korean singer. And I think he chose her because of her demeanor. She was very sort of quiet and meek, and I was sort of, he always told me, "Your gait's too long when you walk across the stage." And I said, "She's not dead yet." She dies in the fourth act. And so we had a very tough time. And the scenery was late, as usually is the case, often in theater productions. Yeah. Things had not arrived, and they decided to inverse our dress rehearsals, which meant that I was going to get the earlier dress rehearsal. I should have gotten the last one when the set wasn't complete, and they were going to be able to get the more complete set. But it meant that also I was going to have many days between my dress rehearsal and my performance, because they were first cast and I was second cast. Because when Shippers died, he was replaced by student conductor, James Cunlin. who did what the adults told them to do. And so I had no comfort there. Musically, yes, but not in terms of sort of defending my rights for rehearsal. And so when that was announced to me, I got quite angry and walked and said, I said, if I do well in this role, it's going to be in spite of you. And walked off the stage. And he said, well, you don't have to be in this production. And I said, I know, but I walked off the stage directly to the president's office, President Menon, whom I knew because when I came to Juilliard, it was the first year in the new building. And to earn extra money, I did all kinds of little jobs. And so they were having many receptions. And so I was often serving the reception, and I got to know Dr. and Mrs. Menon. And so I went to his office, and I said, he wasn't there. And his secretary called him at home, and he called back, and I talked to him, and I told him what the problem was. And so he said, now just wait there and calm down. And then the secretary said, Dean Waldrop, who is still in his office, go back to the theater, he's going to come down. So we went, so I came back, and he happened to be a very close friend of Jenny Terrell's. She was away on tour at that time. And so he came down, and he was trying to calm me down. And I said to him, I think you more than anybody except Jenny Terrell knows how much it means to me to do the work I'm doing here. I said, but I shouldn't have to kiss the behind, which is not the word I use, of that director. If I have to do that in order to have a career, then I'd rather sell subway tokens for a living. Of course, Mr. Terrell said to me, you should never have behaved like that, dear. And I said, Mr. Terrell, you would have never accepted yourself. She said, no, you're right, I know, but you shouldn't have. But anyway, as it turned out, I went back, I did the rehearsals, but also all through the rehearsals, I always got the end of the rehearsals. He rehearsed the whole cast, and the tenor and I were the only double cast. And so everybody was sort of sitting around eating a sandwich while we rehearsed our bit. So I sort of had held myself a long time. And then finally, we did our performance. And for the first time, Kakiana saw my performance. And he liked it so much, he actually tried to add added performances so that I could do it again. I met him, when was that? It's about 10 years ago in Athens. I had a concert. And he came, and you couldn't imagine how he was telling that I was the most beautiful Mimi. I was his favorite singer. I mean, she did the most beautiful Mimi I have ever seen in my life. Maybe he meant that. But it was really great. But I think during the rehearsals, he was so intent on the other cast that when we rehearsed, he wasn't even watching. So he didn't see what I was capable of until the performance. So, but anyway, it was a very tough moment. And I was very unfortunate that Mr. Terrell was away on tour at the time. And I sort of had to handle that, but that was sort of my character came out. I don't think that I remember it's not something quite similar happening when I was rehearsing Figaro, Nozze Figaro in La Scala with Riccardo Muti, who I was my first time working with him, warned me that he was incredibly difficult and he could be very mean. And he was not, as it turned out. I enjoyed working with him. But we were also two casts, and one of the countess came to me. She was from Romania. And she said, and this was still during the time of the Iron Curtain. She said, my father is really very ill. And I want to go back and see him, but I'm afraid to ask Maestro Muti. And I said, wait, let's get this straight. You live in Romania, you have Ceausescu, and you're afraid of Muti? I said, your father's dying. I said, if you're afraid that he is not going to hire you because you asked to go and see your dying father, then you shouldn't want to sing with him anyway. She asked him, and he gave her permission, which I was grateful because I would have been so disappointed if he had thought that his production was more important than her father's. So, I mean, to stand up to, I learned that from being a preacher's daughter. It's a very good school for learning how to speak your voice to authority.
Exactly. Who taught you to be an actor? I mean, we know who your voice teacher was, but how did you learn to be such a successful actor?
I just always loved it. The bug with Dallas Williams to love my love of the theater started here in Howell, yes.
How about that?
And the respect for others in the theater.
Yeah.
That came from him, really. And I was always interested. I remember in Aspen, I was reading theater books, and I was a groupie here. I was definitely a theater groupie, you know. I sort of sat, there used to be a cafe near in the theater, and so I would sit there and hope that the actors would talk to me, you know. I was a groupie, and because I loved the theater, and I saw in the music, and I thought, used to think sometimes, I've been given this instrument, so therefore I should sing. But if I hadn't, I think I would have wanted to act. So I think it's because my love of acting, and also the being able to not just sing the music for me, but involve the audience. You have to find some way to make it accessible and real to them. And so I've always been interested in doing that.
Other questions? Yes?
I wanted to know, at what point in your very assumed career did you really connect your passion for performing with your humanitarian work?
Well, the way I got started I've always been concerned about things going around me. Always, gave my opinion even when it wasn't asked about things. So when I was asked to be a Goodwill ambassador for refugees nearly 30 years ago, I felt that it was a way of sort of bringing together my very strong belief that human rights is something that is universal. And that, when I was also at that period when I was in my 20s, I was 20 in 1968. So that period where we thought we were marching, changing the world, working for women's rights, minority rights, and it sort of occurred to me that if we all work together for all of our rights, then we wouldn't be working I won't work for my rights as a woman against you as a man. We have universal rights. And so I saw the opportunity to work for the cause for refugees as a possibility to put something that I believe very deeply into action. Because most of the time people become refugees because human rights are being abused somewhere. And people are escaping from the result of that. The work has been very enriching because of my colleagues who dedicate their lives, and some have given their lives for the cause of refugees, but also because of the refugees themselves. They're just like us. It is fate that has put them in a situation where they live in a country where there's conflict and they're forced to leave. Most people love their homes, love their cultures, and are looking forward to being able to return home as soon as they can. And some of us are luckier that we live in places where there's peace. But it is of all of these other refugees, the women have touched me the deepest. The women are the most vulnerable, very often. They're often alone with children, sometimes with elderly relatives. They have the responsibility. Being in a refugee camp, it's not Club Med. I mean, you have to sometimes walk, kilometers to get the water that is available, to go get food. It's dangerous. Sometimes it's dangerous, particularly for women and girls. But women I have met who have, assumed the roles that they have to play with enormous courage and dignity. And so, I can sit in my garden in the summer and think, well, what can I do? I mean, it's just so many problems in the world, what can I do? But then I remember their faces and I thought, they don't give up. Neither can I. So and where it connects to the music, sometimes during a concert I can feel the audience listening to the music with one ear. I can feel that the music is vibrating in us at the same time. And I think that vibration reminds us that we're all a member of the same family, humanity. And that from that place that we hear that music is where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have sprung. You know, and the first article is, all human beings are born free, equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with conscience and reason and should behave toward one another in a spirit of brotherhood. It doesn't get better than that.
Very good. Other questions? Yes?
I have a question. I personally knew Jeanette Cybers.
Yes.
And I know how much she loved you and spent a lot of time with you. And so I just wanted you to know that she was the first one that introduced the idea of you to me. And so I've loved you ever since.
Thank you. She was tireless, and she was so upset that I didn't win in Minneapolis. I mean, she was furious.
Didn't let that go, did she?
Yeah, she said, you should have won. You were definitely the best. But, she gave to me years later the paper that they had written, the jury. And they said, you know, wonderful things about my singing, but very young. And they said, and what language was she singing? Curious language. No, but so, I mean, they were right. I was much too young to go and stand on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. Yeah, but the thing of it is that I went far enough to realize maybe this is something I should consider. So that was important, what I did, more important than winning. And because to have gone to the Met really so underprepared would have put an enormous pressure on me. And who knows if I would have ever met Jenny Terrell. So. But I'm very grateful for her and for all the ladies on the committee and the many friends that I had that have supported me. I received yesterday from Laurie Smith, who's here, the daughter of Richard Smith, a box of paper, my letters that I had written to them over the years. And the list of the friends of Barbara Hendricks. You know, they never told me who was on that list. They never said, you know, I was at their home for I think a recital and reception, and they never said, you know, you owe this to this one. Never. And the first time I saw the list was last night when I looked at it. Because, I mean, I knew some of the people because I recognized their faces and they were always there. The Seidels were there, the Websters, Dale Gans, and many people. Lee Stover, who was the neighbor on Sheridan Boulevard. So I knew some of those people because they knew me, but there were many there whose faces I would have recognized, but then I never knew their names. And it was such a wonderful, it felt so great that they supported me, and you know, they never ever asked for anything in return. But Pat and Dick Smith came to visit me at my home in Switzerland, and they did tell me, they said, we never imagined that this was going to lead. So we were all very, very happy that I came as an exchange student.
Yeah.
And what I got in exchange.
We're all very happy too, yeah. You talked about your early years and the music to which you listened and how you prepared your Met audition by listening to recordings and absorbing the music in that way. To whom do you listen now?
I listen to a lot of jazz and blues right now, yeah. Because I added to my career jazz and blues. I'm becoming quite a blues singer, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't know blues very much because my father thought it was the devil's music. Was not allowed in our house.
Wow.
And so I'm discovering the blues quite late and loving it. So I listened to a lot of that. But I'll tell you something about listening to records once. I wanted to impress Jenny Terrell because she was really a great singer of French music. And I prepared the Baudelaire songs of Debussy, quite a big undertaking for a beginner. And, and I wanted to surprise her with them by copying everything she did on her record. So I came to my lesson and she said, "Where did you hear that? That's awful." It was exactly what she did, scooping everything. She said, "This is all," and I knew that she did not like for us to listen to records. So I didn't dare tell her that it was from hers. And she said, "Take the score and go learn what Debussy wrote and come back and sing it to me like you wrote it." So that was the end of sort of listening to things to learn. And so now I would listen, but only after I'd learned something and after I'd performed it. So that I would not copy, or that I would not copy anybody else, even her mannerisms. Because when you copy, you tend to copy the things that are sort of strange in somebody's way of singing. Instead of, because it's a whole, so you cannot really copy. So when I started to sing jazz, one of my favorite jazz singers was Billie Holiday, so I stopped listening to her. But then I realized nobody can copy Billie Holiday.
That's right.
Listen all you want.
Listen all you want.
Any more than you can really copy College. You can copy her, the things that are wrong, or the things that are sort of the quirks in her voice. But you can't copy Callas. Yeah. So I would never listen, but listen for pleasure, but of course, that first year, well, I had 2 records. I had one of Joan Sutherland and the one of Leontine Price. And I thought Joan Sutherland was singing notes faster than I could think them. I said, well, I'll forget that. I won't be able to sing that. And I told her that when we met, because she eventually moved to above where I lived in Switzerland.
Really?
And we had the same dentist. So we had dinner once at his house. And I told her, I said, probably didn't go into the direction of your repertoire because I thought you had to be born with feathers in order to sing that high. And she thought that was great.
Yes, she did.
But
so
the other one I had was Leontine Price, and but I would not advise students to listen to others, but to the answers in the score. Do what the composer wrote, because that's really your Bible. And because you never know why a singer may have done something that is on a recording that is not in the score. So the score is the thing to read.
But for the blues, not always a score at all.
There's no score at all.
Yeah, so now what?
So now it's, the words, is, get out the story.
Yeah.
Get out the story.
So it's another kind of recitation.
Yeah, it is. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of fun doing blues. It's. I don't change my voice. I sing lower, not, but I use my high voice a lot. I have a new recording coming out in the fall called Blues Everywhere I Go.
And tell us on what label it is.
On my label.
Thank you.
Artiverum.
Yeah.
Started my own label. Yes, I started my own label 8 years ago because I was unhappy with what the majors were doing, all of them, but and I was very privileged because I was able to record what I wanted to, but they were no longer valuing what we do. They were no longer valuing the musicians nor our repertoire, our real repertoire. And so I had repertoire that I wanted to record, that I wanted to leave behind me, that was a part of repertoire that I was singing for my audience. And they would say, Schubert, doesn't sell. So I decided to first record archives for myself. And I thought I'd leave them to my children and they could do something with it. But the producer said to me, what are you going to do with this? I didn't do any editing, anything. I just had the money to record, went in and recorded. And mostly recital chamber music, because a big orchestra was really outside the limits of my budget. And so he said, after we've done about 5 of them, he said, what are you going to do with this? And he said, today you don't need the distribution of the big labels, because now with the internet and also smaller distributors. So we decided I had 6 months left on my exclusive contract. And I remember it was something like the middle of March.
With whom?
With EMI.
There we go.
Which no longer exists. And I was sitting on my couch, picked up the phone. I said, it's over, because they had the option to prolong it a year, and nobody called. I said, out of here. So we started our Teverum, which came out in, I think, September of that year, with the first record. And I think we have about 10 now.
And they're just outside that door.
And the next one is blues, and it includes Schubert, Schumann, Brahms. I think there's a Poulenc. There's also Pergolesi, Stabat Mater, with Baroque Orchestra, Drottningholm Baroque Orchestra. There's a first blues album, and Spanish songs. So there are two that are still haven't been edited. That are coming, Mahler songs with the Abschied from the Lied van der Erde, with chamber orchestra on it, and Shostakovich block songs.
Oh.
Those two have still to be edited, so their will come out soon. So.
You told me you were retired. This doesn't sound like the work of a retiree, my dear.
Since, yes, officially, for the Swiss authorities, age 64, you're officially retired. And so I'm officially retired.
I see.
And I've taken up gardening. It is so wonderful. I was really concerned because because I live both in Switzerland and Sweden. And in Sweden, my husband has built me the most wonderful greenhouse. But we've had extremely sunny spring, but still quite cold. So at night it's been going down to just above freezing. So all my tomatoes were inside. And I thought, well, I guess I can't cancel because of tomatoes, can I?
No.
So I put them in a house where a friend of mine has the key, and so he's going in to water them and to check them every other day. So now I'm into gardening in the summer, and we have a short season, so
But long days.
Long days, but a short season of summer that you can really grow. So I'm into that, and I am the most gaga grandmother that has ever.
There we are.
I know, but he is so wonderful.
Yeah,
Marlon, he's almost 3. And I must say that after leaving here, I will go to Los Angeles on Sunday, because on Friday, my son will receive his master's degree from USC in film production.
Yeah.
So tomorrow I will speak, but on Friday I'll cry.
There you are. That's great.
I told him, I said, the one crying the loudest is going to be me, Seb. So don't even bother to be embarrassed. It's going to be me.
That's right. We have time for a couple more questions.
I would like to make a comment, if I may. When you sang in Kimball, and you had a Russian accompanist, and you sang Negro spirituals.
Yeah. With him, yes. Dmitry Alexeyev, yes.
There it is, exactly. I'm sorry.
Yes, very interesting. I went to what was the Soviet Union at that time one summer to do chamber music with some musicians that I knew, and but kind of not. They were official concerts, but it was the season. It wasn't the season. So we went to Riga. We were not in Moscow at the Bolshoi or anything like so. And one day we were waiting. I was doing some Handel, and we were waiting for the harpsichord hadn't arrived, and so we were waiting. And he was sitting in the corner playing some jazz. And I thought, wow. So we did some spirituals, and he improvises. So he had a score, but he was improvising. And so I said, we should do these together. So we did, I recorded my first Negro spirituals with the Russian pianist. His parents had gone to Russia after the revolution. You remember the film Reds, where there were quite a lot of Americans who believed in that revolution and went. They were from New York. And so I guess that somehow he brought some Gershwin or something with him in his jeans, and because he plays fantastically. He played really, yes. Dmitry Alexeyev. It was a wonderful partnership.
Well, you sang names.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question. Going briefly back to your days when you were here, when you were at Juilliard, you talked about having no regrets in kind of pursuing with abandon. Did you have days where you thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing? And how did you kind of get through that?
Not really. I think it was because I was too ignorant to be afraid to fail, because I had no idea what succeeding or failing was going to be. But I was having a great time. I really loved my lessons. I had acting classes. I actually studied dance with Jose Limon, for those of you who are dancers, one of the pioneers of American modern dance. Yeah. It's my dance teacher. I thought, God, how can he dancing for opera singers? He must go home and think, what a nightmare. But for me, just to watch him walk across the stage was a lesson. He was such a beautiful dancer. I had acting lessons and mime lessons, and so there was just so much in the theater, to go to the theater and be able to go to the opera and go to concerts. I remember getting caught slipping into a concert of Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein was, in the book I talk about 3 conductors who really were enormously important to me. Herbert von Karajan, Giulini, and Leonard Bernstein. Bernstein was a very good friend of Jenny Turrell. And Jenny Turrell died the year I graduated from Juilliard. And Bernstein became kind of my link to her in a way. And but before that, while I was still a student, one of his students was a friend of mine, and he was performing Fidelio with the Juilliard Orchestra in what was then Philharmonic Hall, which is now Avery Fisher Hall, right, unless somebody has given more money and they changed the name.
Changed the name again.
But it was Philharmonic Hall at the time. And so he said, well, we can't get tickets. I said, no, it's impossible to get tickets. So we slipped into the building from backstage. And for quite a long time, hid under a stairwell. And until it was time, people started to come in. And so we were just about to walk out into where the audience was, when somebody sort of grabbed both of us like here. It was the manager of New York Philharmonic. And so just as we were about to be thrown out, Bernstein saw his student and so said, let them stay. And we went, and at that time there was a hidden box, so but you couldn't see the person sitting there, but you could. That doesn't exist anymore. When they renovated, they took it away. So we got to sit there and watch the concert. So that was, so it was just so much exciting things to do. Life was not easy because every month I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. Usually I managed, didn't get kicked out of my building. Had a boyfriend who dumped me. That wasn't very funny. So it took me some months to get over that. But it was basically a fantastic time. But it's because I think I tend to see the glass half full instead of half empty. So I look for I feel so blessed in my life, and so therefore I look at the blessings. And it was probably a tougher time, especially financially. I had my studies paid for, but I had to, for food, and I had to work. I worked at Juilliard, and one of the things that was really important for me, I worked in something which at that time was called, it doesn't exist anymore, Lincoln Center Student Program. And that was a program where we went into schools in the ghettos in the 5 boroughs of New York to junior high schools to do concerts. And there were several different constellations. I first started out at the Met Studio, where we were a quartet, and we went and we sang opera arias and duets and trios. And we had a guy there who was sort of from the Met Studio, who was, he would sort of introduce the program, but he was talking to the kids as if he was talking to, retired ladies at tea. and it didn't go over very well. So we rarely finished our programs. When we got to the trio from Cozy, we thought, well, let's see, before, chaos was, and we ended up having to leave the stage. But I applied for that program. I got $55 for each concert to do recitals. And I went into some places that I didn't know existed in America. I mean, the South Bronx. I grew up not at all, I would say, I never say poor. We were not poor, but we didn't have any money. But I wasn't poor. So, but we didn't have any money. But I'd never seen, and also, grew up in the South and outside. So I was rich. I had always my sky above me, my trees. And I got out of the subway in the South Bronx, and I thought, I don't know how children who live like this can even go to school. But I went there and tried to sing to them. And I would try to explain to them that, I know this is strange that I'm singing this music by dead white men from another continent. I said, but I love this music and I want to try to share it with you. I said, I really would like to sing like Aretha Franklin, but I don't have that voice. So I did these concerts, and I was quite successful. Successful meant that I got to finish. And it was a great lesson for me because it taught me that my attitude, my sincerity toward my audience is much more important than their knowledge about what I was singing. That they didn't have to be knowledgeable. They just had to feel that my engagement for what I was singing was real, and that to get them to sort of come. Now, I don't expect any of those kids ran down to Carnegie Hall and bought tickets to hear Fisher D. Scow do Should a Murderin'?
Yeah, probably not.
But I hoped that I could show them that if there's something that you want to be or something that you want to do, even though people around you may tell you that's crazy, you can't do that you listen to that voice that says, maybe I can. I said, because I'm doing something that nobody in my family would have ever imagined. And if I had brought it up to them when I was your age, they would have said, you can't do that. So that was a more important message. But I received, I think, so much more from them than they received from me. Because I really received an important lesson of life, an important lesson for my career. So my attitude toward my audience, whether they be children in a refugee camp, I don't sing concerts in refugee camps, but sometimes I sing for the children. Or whether that are kings of queens. I've sung for both. I'm the same, and the same attitude. And it's about the music, no matter to whom I'm singing. So.
With that, help me thank
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the only thing I can say, it's great to be back. It really is. And I'm so glad there are enough of you still alive to remember who I am. Yes, because it's been 46 years since I graduated from here. So I'm very happy. And the only thing I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you.